Lowering the rear ride height and installing front lowering collars on a C8 Z51 with mag ride and front lift. So today I'm going to be installing some lowering collars and performing the adjustment of the rear suspension on a C8 Z51 with mag ride and front lift. I got some stuff here today. Came from Paragon Performance. I'm sure most, if not everybody, is familiar with them. They make some great products. Everything they get is pretty much top quality. And I can't say I've ever heard of anybody ever complaining about anything that they have said. The only minor gripe I've ever heard with them is maybe that they are a little expensive, but you get what you pay for. They make great stuff. Their customer service is outstanding. You can always call them up and they will be happy to help you. And they're very knowledgeable and they know exactly what they're talking about. So I have the front wrenches. I have the wrenches here to adjust the rear suspension as well as the front collars. And here's basically everything you get. So I wanted to actually hang on to this box a little bit because just to give you an idea of the type of packaging they give you, it's really good stuff. And like I said, you're getting what you pay for. So here's the wrenches. Comes in this nice box with this nice foam cutout. I ended up going with the factory C8, the Chevrolet wrenches, because the Paragon ones were on back order at this point. So I bought these. I believe they were about $75. They come in this nice little foam container, which is kind of a shame that these things are going to get thrown out afterwards, or the box, excuse me, not the wrenches. But it's pretty good quality stuff. High strength wrenches, good stuff. We'll see what we come with, and they even have a little 3/8 adapter right there. The next thing that I had is the little kit that you get for the lowering collar. So it comes in this little box, and again, foam cutouts, nice stuff and everything. Here is your lowering collar. This is how it's going to sit once it's actually on the car. There is a 3/8 shim that you can get with it as well too. I did not get that because that is really only advised with cars that have lowered springs as well. My car does not. I don't plan on putting lowered springs on there. I like the stock ones, otherwise it's going to be too low and I'm afraid I'm going to scrape all the time. So I just went with the collars themselves. So it comes obviously with the two collars for both front, and then inside I've got the other two tools that come along with it. This is a de-pinning tool. This will de-pin the connector for the mag ride when you get to that point. I'll show you how to use that a little bit later. And this is a socket specifically for the magnetic ride control to get that top nut off the top. You see it has a little cutaway on it to get the wire to swing it out of the way, and you'll see where that comes from. There was a little black plastic piece that came on here as well too. I already took it off, just part of its packaging. And you can see it's basically a 17mm socket. But because it has this special cutout, that's what lets you get the wiring out of the way. So show you how to use that once it gets to that point. But again, here's the boxes that it comes in, good quality stuff. And it's almost kind of a shame, like I said, that it's going to get thrown away because I don't really have much of a use for it afterwards. So here's my car as it sits right now. Again, this is a 2021 with Z51, mag ride, and front lift. The front lift system is down right now, and the car is in my garage, obviously on the lift, but it's actually not up in the air at all. So just to give you a quick measurement from before and after. So if I go straight down and I go to the bottom of the fender right here, I'm at about 27¼ inches. So if I try to go straight up and down possible, going down the center of the wheel, again, I'm at about 27¼ inches. So that's the front. If I come back here to the rear and I take the same measurement again, try to go straight down the center of the wheel, I'm at, if I look at the bottom of the quarter panel, it's 28½ inches. So you got 27¼ in the front and 28½ in the rear. These are the stock height, so we'll see how much of a difference it makes after I make the adjustments in the rear and I put the front collars in the front. So just to say too, Paragon does have a video on their website, on their YouTube channel, to install, or how to install these front collars, as well as how to lower it with the wrenches. It is a great video. This is just an extra video I wanted to make, showing you just how I did it, which is pretty much going to be the same way as they did it. But just because their video, they don't have somebody saying commentary as it goes along. They put the little text message, the little text on the bottom of the screen as to how to do it. Sometimes, you know, just little extra tips and tricks of other people that have done it. Like I said, pretty much my install, the way I'm doing it, I followed their video that they put up, so this is just me kind of talking on how I'm doing it as I'm going, just in case you were kind of wondering how to have something a little extra explained. So first things first, just like I like to do in all of my videos, if I'm ever going to disconnect anything electrical on this car, I swear I found them to be so finicky. First thing I always do is disconnect the battery. I am going to be disconnecting the mag ride control, so there's going to be an electrical connection I'm going to disconnect, so I'm going to disconnect the battery. You probably don't necessarily have to, in their video it doesn't have to, but I swear every single time I found I've disconnected everything, something acts screwy afterwards, and then I got to go through the whole process of resetting everything. So I just disconnect everything right off the bat. So plus you got to take this panel off anyways to get to the front strut and disconnect those nuts. So I'm going to take off these 3 panels and disconnect the battery. These obviously just pop in and out. These are just little clips. Very simple. I'm going to take out the other side as well, because I'm going to pop this panel off too. Okay. Once I have that out, obviously I'm going to be able to get to my front struts. Now, first things first, like I said, disconnect the battery. Just disconnect the negative side. It's just a 10 millimeter to get it off. Loosen it up, pull it up out of the way, and tuck it aside so that way it doesn't reconnect accidentally. This right here, this little blue cap, I'll show you in a second here. This is going to be your hydraulic fluid fill for the front mag ride. You are going to need a little bit of DOT fluid, DOT4 fluid to top it off. And this is how you do it. I'm going to show you how to bleed the system a little bit later. Just to show you a little better, that is where your front mag ride is going to be, as well as the 3, I believe 13 millimeter nuts to get it off, and the cap for the front fluid. And the other side is your other one, and again, just the 13 millimeter nuts and the disconnector, the electrical connector for it as well. Okay, so first I'm just going to pry up on the little metal clip. Get the mag ride connector off of the strut tower brace, no problem, it just pops right up. Then you have to disconnect the little safety tab first. Put that in, twist your little screwdriver, push it back. Once it's back, now you can disconnect it. Go ahead and press down on that little tab, slide it back, and it'll come out. And as long as you're up here, you go ahead and loosen these 3 13 millimeters. I don't have the collar up in the air yet. I am going to loosen these. It's okay because all the weight is still on it. It's not really a big deal, but you're going to take these out, but you're going to leave one in place, and I'll show you in a second here. So one of these bolts, the one back here, is actually pretty deep down in there, but once you get in there, you will see it. It's pretty obvious. Just get a 13 millimeter and a decent extension, and I'll take it out. So I'll take 2 of them out, but I'm going to leave the 3rd one in at this point. So after I take 2 of them out, now I'm going to take the 3rd one out, but then I'm going to put it back on. So I'll take the 3rd one off, but then I'm going to run it back on by hand. The reason for this is when you take the bottom bolts out later, you're still going to have this nut holding it in from the top, but it's not just going to drop down and up and out of the way. You'll see what I mean when you get there. So take that one out, but then run it back down by hand and just get it on for a couple of threads, just so that way it doesn't fall when you loosen the bottom ones. So now once you have the car up in the air, however you get it up in the air, on jack stands or whatever, I happen to have a lift in my garage, I have that luxury, just take the wheel off. 22 millimeter, get the lug nuts off. Now these are going to be the 2 things you're looking for in here. You're looking for this electrical connector right here, which is the electrical disconnect for the front lift if you have it. Obviously, we wouldn't be putting the lower ring colorings on if you didn't, so I don't know why I said that. But then you also have your banjo bolt right here. This is how the fluid is going to get into the system itself, right there. So you have what looks kind of like a little bit of a brake line. You need to take that off. Put a drip pan underneath because you are going to lose a little bit of fluid underneath. Whenever you take that bolt off, whatever you do, do not use an impact tool. Banjo bolts are notoriously kind of sensitive, or they kind of break a little easily, so just be careful. Just crack it loose, and then once you get it off, just take this one off by hand. Keep any power tools off of it. You see I'm going to lose a little bit of fluid. And be aware, because there's probably, I haven't got it off yet, but there's going to be a copper washer on the back side of it. That is the seal for it. So once you get that off, again, this is an 11 millimeter. And see, you have the washers on both sides. Make sure you keep those washers because that is how it seals. So now I'm going to disconnect the electrical connector. And it's going to be an electrical connector just like the one up top. Just go ahead and slide the red tab down. Once you have that, squeeze, and it will pull right out. Lift it up, and there we go. Okay. Now get those up and out of the way. It is going to continue to drip the whole time. That is okay. Just make sure you clean it off a little bit before you put it back on. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to remove the bolt that holds in the whole strut assembly on the bottom. It's right here. It's a 21 millimeter bolt on this side, and there's also a 21 millimeter nut on the other side. Just hold the 21 millimeter nut with a wrench and take that out. Okay. Now you can see once I took that out, see how it kind of gave a little bit. Now at this point, what you can do is you can go back up top and take that 13 millimeter nut off. The one that you put in by hand. Okay. Now some people, when they do certain suspension things on here, they're going to want you to take those 4 bolts out that take the upper control arm, those 4, take those out. I don't really think it's necessary to take it out. I don't like to I like to disrupt as little as possible when I do this, or when I do any suspension work for that matter. So when I take this, one thing all you have to do is take the whole system, bend it down a little bit. And out it comes. Okay, so here's the places that you want to mark this thing when you take it apart, so that way it aligns correctly when you go back. So mark it on the strut itself. This is the collar that's going to be removed. Yeah, you can go ahead and mark it if you want, but it doesn't really matter. Then go ahead and mark the base of the front lift system as well too. Then come on up here. You're going to mark the rubber mounting for this, for the lower mount. The spring itself. Come on up top, then mark the spring, the upper mount, and the hat. And those are the places you're going to want to do it. And the other thing too is if you look, this thing already actually kind of has some marks on it in some certain places. You'll notice this line right here is kind of towards this thing right, this little line right here. This line, when it's installed, is going to be towards the front of the car, so it's a little bit more towards the front. The other thing is too, you have a little arrow right here and you have a little arrow right here. This aligns the bottom mount, the rubber seat, to the actual front lift system. And I think the top has it somewhere as well too. Maybe not, I don't see it, but either way, that's how you mark it. But anyways, when I take it apart, those are the places you're going to want to mark it to actually have it and be able to put it back together properly. Okay, Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just take apart the connector here, just because once I have this whole assembly off, it'll make it a little easier. I'm not going to have to go back and change this later. So in order to take this apart, it's just a little bit of plastic pieces. Just spread them apart and it'll come off. That little connector right there, or excuse me, that little clip right there. And there's going to be a part of it on the back as well too. So there's going to be 4 little tabs that hold this little plastic piece in. Take that little covering off. Now take a look at the orientation and how you have it here. So now the way I'm going to remember this is with the clip facing me, the white wire is on my right. So the white on the right side with the clip facing up. I'll remember that. Then you're going to have to go inside the connector in there and line up the de-pinning tool in those little purple tabs in there. And that's what's going to pop out the wires. This is where that little tool comes into play. Okay, so this can be a little tricky, but this is how you're going to have it done. With the clip facing up, you're going to go in, you're going to find that little purple tab, and you're going to slide it to the right to align it with the terminals. Once you have that, take the hook of the tool and have it pointed down. Once you do that, align it up with the terminal, stick it in the top, give it a little bit of light pressure, and then grab the wire in the back, and it'll pull right out. Okay, then just do the same thing with the other side. Align the purple terminal, again, hook down, clip up, go, give it a little bit of pressure, and it comes out. Now as the tool is in there, kind of give it like a little bit of a pry motion up like that, and that's what's going to release the clip to let it come out. So, and just take this little boot, squeeze it, it comes right off. Take the wire loom off. Move that forward and just get it up out of the way for now. That's fine. Okay, you are going to take that nut off eventually, but first we're going to compress the spring. Okay, here's where the importance of having the proper tools comes into play too. If you don't have the proper tools, please don't try to do this, otherwise it is going to be incredibly dangerous. Okay, this is a spring compressor. I happen to have my own. If you don't have one, you can go down to the auto parts store and rent one. They're not that expensive to go ahead and rent. Put that in. I got my pin in. I got my other pin in. Pin in. Run that down by hand. Move this over and get it side to side. Okay. And now I run it in little by little on each side, compressing the spring. Okay, once I get to the point where I can kind of twist the hat by itself and I can see the spring's not moving, I know the spring is compressed. Now, that's where that special socket comes into play. Okay, now once you have all that out, what you got to do is, it's a little bit tricky at this point. Again, you're going to need some specialty tools if you don't have them. So what I did was I took the strut and I put it in the vise just to hold it in place for me. It's just clamped down on there on the end, just so that way it doesn't twist. Next you got to take this little rubber cap off. No big trick with that. Just slide it to the edge. Watch, I'll put it back on for you real quick just to show you. It does fit over. Once it's on, you know, you'll have the wire loom up here and it'll slide right over it. So take that rubber cap off. Next thing you got to do is you are going to have to crack that nut loose, okay? It is going to be a little bit of a pain because as you spin this nut, this threaded part, the actual part of the strut that it goes onto, is going to spin with it. So here's the tricky part, and you got to be pretty careful with this. Once you have that cap off, feed the wires through the hole at that point. Put it in there. get it at that point. Then take an impact gun. Again, be very careful with this, but this is how you gotta do it. You put it on and you just kind of give it one quick little jolt, just enough of a jolt to spin it and turn it to get it loose to the point where you can get it to go. Once you see it spinning on its own, then you do it by hand. I'm sorry I didn't film it. I'll try to see if I can get it on the other side once I do it. But then you can go ahead and spin it and get the nut off. Then, once you have that, take the nut off, and then the whole hat will also come off with it, as you can see. Okay. And there it is. Nut comes off. Off comes the hat. And then I can take the whole spring off as well too. Now remember, this spring is still under tension. The tool is holding it. Don't let it go. Now with me, the bump stop came off with it. You have the bump stop. Usually the bump stop is going to stay inside just like that. Just slide it right off. Mine happened to be inside the boot right here, so it came off with it. Just take that off. Now come back over here. Now you got to get this little cap off. What you do is take this and just use it as a slide hammer, and it'll come out. Once that's out, slide the whole front lift assembly out, and then you have your factory collar right down here. Slide it right up. Now once you have this off, you're going to take that lower marking that you made before, that one right there they had when you had the original collar on, and you're going to bring it straight down to right there. Reason being is because when you put the new collar on, the Paragon collar, it's going to slide over it and it's going to go lower than that mark, and it's going to throw you off. So that way now you have that new mark down there to line up your other parts, so that way it's all straight. Now in case you happen to screw up and you mismark things, here's a little trick way to get it back, okay? So just to show you how these collars work too. This is the factory one and it sits right there. It's got this little ridge right here and it goes down, that's where it sits. So if you take a look at about right there, that's where it's going to sit. Try to hold it in place with my finger. Then, once you put the Paragon ones on, Paragon is going to be facing down, and then you're going to take the front lift and put it back on. Now, just in case your markings went away and you missed it, here's a little cheat way to line it up, okay? Now, if you see, you'll see the little line right here. There's like a break in between where it's actually made, and you have these two little lines right here too. So orient this thing as if you're putting it in the car and how it's going to sit as to which way is the front of the vehicle. You have these two little hash marks down here, this one over here. Take that line and put it kind of like center of those two hash marks, and then put it just a little bit towards the front, and that's going to be your marking as to how it lines up, just in case you happen to mismark and everything. Then once you have it all set, put it all back together. Okay, once you have the front lift back on, slide that back on with your new collar. Then you can take your new cap, slide that back on. And you're going to see there's little dimples that hold it in place. Once you get it in, you might have to tap it in with a hammer just a little bit, or a rubber mallet. Actually, rather would be better. Bump stop, put that back on, and your spring. Slide it over, get all those marks to line up. Then the hat. And you grab your nut, put that on, thread that back down. And you're going to tighten this down. Don't torque it at this point though. Just get it down. Once you release the tension on the spring, that's when you're going to torque it. Again, you might have to hold the end of the strut to get it to go down. That's normal. Okay, I moved it over and put it back in the vise just so I can get everything to line up. Again, just because sometimes this thing is going to twist on you, I'm going to nudge it along ever so slightly with the impact wrench just to get it to go down. Now you're going to notice here, once you get inside here and once you tighten it down right there, there is not going to be a lot of threads showing right there once you have the nut on, okay? That's normal. Just take note of it before you take it apart. There's only going to be like 2 or 3 threads showing, if that. So once you have that on, that is normal, okay? So now once you have that nut on, go ahead and remove your spring compressor. Do it little by little, just in case something goes wrong. So just work it. Okay. The only reason I had the hammer there was to level it out so that way I can get it in place. You don't need the hammer there for anything else. Tool out of the way. Now I'll go back to this nut and you're going to torque it to 24 foot-pounds. Okay, one other thing that you can do is if you're having a hard time getting this thing to torque down is put it all back together most of the way, and then once you back install it in the car and you have the bolts in, you have everything in, you can tighten this nut while it's in the car and the car's frame will kind of hold it in place. In the meantime, we're going to put back this electrical connector, and just to show you a little bit more of what I was talking about before, you'll have a couple of threads showing down there. And that's really all that's going to be showing. It's just 2 or 3 threads. So if you don't have a lot, don't worry. That's normal. It's the way it is, okay? And as always, if you're doing these things, just do them one side at a time. So that way, just in case you screw something up, you can just look at the other side. Just remember, it's going to be mirrored. Now, take your little rubber cap, put it back over. But I'll move that back over. Okay? And then I'm going to have my electrical connector. Now, I remember when I had my clip up, my white was on the right hand side, so my white's going to be on the right hand side right in here. Reinstall these. Now when you put these up here too, you're going to kind of have this opening in the clip where they actually, you see the little tab is. That's going to be face up with the orientation that I have. So with that up, let's go ahead and push it in. Black is going to be on the left. And I don't know if you heard it or not, but it kind of clicked into place. Then bring the wire loom back up and put this clip back into place as well too. And snap them back into place. There's going to be 4 of them, just like the 4 that you took off. Some of them them might be a little stubborn, so in which case just get a pair of pliers, because remember you bent them a little bit getting them out. And there you go, that'll get it to go back in. Check all your markings to make sure everything is still lined up, and you are good to go. Okay, now I'm just going to reinstall it. That electrical connector. You'll notice there's this one big pin up here too, and obviously it only goes in that one hole, so it only goes in one way. Line those up. Okay, now what I did right there is I just pushed up on the bottom of the strut, or the whole assembly rather, the compressor spring a little bit, and I was able to get one stud aligned up top. Once I got that one stud through, I hand tightened it, so that way I don't have to worry about it falling out. Now, you are going to have to get a little creative and tricky with a pry bar to get it to go in. But if you fiddle around with it enough, it will go. And once you have that all aligned, take my 21mm and put that back in. So on tightening that bolt for the lower strut right down there, I used my wrench to just kind of hit it in, but there is a torque on it. Obviously I put it in afterwards. The torque is 118 foot-pounds. Now, one of the things I just wanted to point out on this, on the banjo bolt, on the hose when it goes back in, see this little diagonal kind of cut right here? This part is what's going to go flat or up against this ridge right here. Don't put this part against this. Don't put this part against this. It's this little diagonal cut. That's the proper orientation for it. So when it goes in, that's how it sits properly and doesn't put too much tension on everything. So that's what it's going to look like once it's back on. You have that. Now again, make sure you have your washers in here and on the inside too, otherwise it's going to leak. So once that's on, you're going to go ahead and torque that down to 30 foot-pounds. Okay, then reconnect your electrical connector for the front lift, side lock, and everything is good to go. Okay, then we're going to reinstall these three nuts. Sometimes you can have a hard time getting the nut all the way down into that little crevice and actually threading it on if you can't fit your fingers down there. So one trick I would do is use a magnet, put it on the end of the nut, put it down there and just twist the magnet as if with a screwdriver. Eventually one or two threads will catch and it'll hold the nut in place, then you just pull the magnet right off and it puts the nut in there. Then you just tighten them down. Connect the connector, slide the lock in, and then re-clip it into place. And this side's good. Okay, once you have that re-clipped into place, just repeat on the other side. Okay, now moving on to the rear. Now here's how you're going to have to lower it. Obviously I've already taken the wheel off and set everything up so you can just see, I'm going to get right into it here. So this little plastic collar has got to come down. So what you can do to get that down is what you really need is just a little flathead screwdriver. And it's going to be kind of hard for you to get a purchase, but then once you get a purchase, try to move a bigger screwdriver in there, and you're going to peel down on it. It is going to fight you a pretty decent amount. It wants to stay in there, but it's just a little plastic rubber piece. Just work your way around, and it will come down. Just like so. Once you get the whole thing, it will just slide right down. it is tedious, and it will come, but it's a pain, especially to get it in the back. If you twist it, there it goes, pops right down. Now it's going to expose your threads right here. Now what you're going to do is you're going to use these special wrenches to lower this collar right here. So what you do is, I've got a little bit of a better angle here for you so I can, because I'm right-handed. You're going to hold this wrench with that one, okay? This is just what's going to hold it in place. And you're going to take this and you're going to loosen it, okay? Oops, I went the other way, sorry. So put that in, it's just going to hold it. Now take the smaller wrench and turn it, and you'll get it to loosen. Once you get it to loosen, you're going to go ahead and thread it all the way down. Bring it all the way down until it falls right there and it'll catch. Because what you're going to do is you're going to lower this all the way down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one or two threads still showing, like one thread, just because I don't like it sitting on the very, very bottom. But if you want to do it that way too, you can bring this back up and just kind of get a marking right here. So I got these two little dots right here. Bring it up right there, okay? So there my threads start to catch. So if I bring that around, I have those two little markings up front, I know I'm up 2 threads. I'm probably up even more than that because that, yes, I'm up about 1.5 threads. So if I go there, I'm going to spin it. Okay, just caught. And I'm going to spin it one more time, bring it back around, and that's where I'm going to keep it. So now I'm going to lower this down the rest of the amount. And that's where the other big wrench comes into play. Now, this is going to be tedious, and it takes a while. So basically, you're just going to grab it right there, hold on to the shock. Sometimes they say use duct tape, and duct tape will be able to grip it a little better. But take some duct tape, wrap it around here, wrap it around the silver part as well also. Wrap it around both sides, and what that's going to do is kind of keep it straight, or give you a place to grip it as you're spinning the top. So line this up again, make sure that's flat, grip it. And there it goes. See, just got to crack it loose on that initial one. Now I'm going to see if this helps a little bit. Spray a little WD-40 in there. Get it to slide a little bit more. Once you do that, now remember, you're fighting the tension of the spring here, which is why it's so hard to do it. But you can see how the bottom part's staying still and the top part is threading down. So I'm not going to sit here and do the whole thing, but when I'm finished and got it all the way down, I'll show you the end result. Okay, now here I have it pretty much lowered all the way down where I wanted it to be. So now at this point, I can remove the tape. Okay. Of course. All right. Now that I have the tape off, all I have to do is lock this into place. So you hold that wrench with that one, and then you're going to tighten the bottom one against the top one. And that's what's going to lock it into place. So run that. Okay, hold that. And there it is. Now you can see how much lower it is. All of that before was on the bottom. Now the bottom is covered up at that point. So now that that's all there, all I gotta do is bring up my little plastic sleeve, just lip it on, and then twist it around, and it kind of works its way on like a stretch belt. I have to help it a little bit, apparently. Okay. All right. Okay. Twist it around so the marks are in the back. And that's it. The back is done. Just repeat on the other side. Okay, so one other thing I wanted to point out real quick, just because I came across it more on the other side when I started to do it, was that sometimes when you, after you lower the locking collar, you're going to look inside and you're going to see in the threads right here, you can see there's kind of a lot of like dirt and gunk and garbage and stuff. That's going to make it a little bit harder when you twist this thing down. So just go ahead and you can kind of see what I did on the other side already. Sorry for the bad angle, but just take a little brush and just kind of clean out the threads a little bit. This is just a little fabric brush, not a wire brush. It doesn't take much to get it out. It's just going to make turning the collar that much easier for you. The other thing that I wanted to let you know too and point it out was as you lower this collar, the lower it goes, the easier it's going to get to turn because there's the most tension on the spring right now. So the lower it goes, the tension is going to kind of relieve a little bit, and this thing is going to get easier the lower you get. So, but yeah, just clean out those threads, and it's going to make it a lot easier for you, and that way you don't have all that stuff kind of stuck in there while you're trying to move it anyways. Okay, now just for the sake of showing you, if you happen to have, if your car doesn't bleed out right away, so normally after you put this all back together, just use the front lift system a couple times up and down, leave the cap off of the fluid reservoir, and the system should bleed just fine on its own. My car did not need it to be bled, however all cars are different, as we all know, so that's what it is. But just for the sake of showing you, there is a bleed procedure in case you have to do it, so don't worry, there is a workaround. I'm not going to go over exactly how to do it. If enough people come back at me and say they need to know how to do it, then I'll make a video on it. But just to show you, right there, that rubber cap on the front lift system on the collar, you can see the whole thing right there. I'm looking at it from, this is the right front wheel, the passenger front, and this is looking at it from the back of the car looking forward. You can see that rubber cap right there, that black cap. Underneath that cap is a bleed screw for the system, so that's how you would bleed it if you need to do it. Obviously you would just kind of put the system up and down and use it while you had that screw open and closed. It's a little bit of a pain, but it can be done, so there is a fix to do it should you have to do it. But I don't anticipate you needing to do it, but if you do, let me know and I'll make something as to how to do it. Okay, and of course, just like anything else, when you're all done, just reconnect your battery terminal. I only disconnected the negative side. Tighten that back up, and you should be pretty much all good to go. At this point, just you know, you're gonna have to re-index your windows and all that stuff and everything, like I said before, but it's a normal thing. So when you actuate the system a couple times, I would leave the cap off here. This is your fluid reservoir for the front lift system, as I pointed out before. It's just to get any air bubbles that'll probably come in and it'll come up to the surface. Just run the system up and down a couple times. It should be fine. If anything, and you have to do a bleed system, you can always do it later. Like I said, I'll make a video for that if need be. But you should be fine. Most cars are fine. I haven't heard of anybody actually having to do that yet. So Yeah, and then when you're done, just pop the panels back on and you're good to go. Hope this helps. Good luck. Okay, so it's been a few days since I did the front collars and the adjustment on the rears. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like now. I don't remember, honestly, off the top of my head what the measurements were when I did it, because I did it a few days ago. But if you look at the measurements now in the front, you are looking at about, from the bottom of the fender, exactly where I measured it before, it's about 26 and in between a quarter and a half. So 26 and 3/8, whatever you want to call it that. I believe before it was 27 and a half or 27 and 3/4, somewhere around there. So it did drop it a little bit. Not so much to the point where I'm having so much of a problem now where I'm scraping on everything. I think it lowered it actually just enough to where it still looks really good, but it's not so low that I got to worry about scraping on everything. Now I know this is another thing too that people talk about, and you see it all over the forums and or all over the Facebook groups and all that and everything, which to be honest with you I kind of have a little bit of an issue with. But a lot of people talk about the front lift system in general. Having the front lift makes a world of difference for me, at least, and where I am, as far as not scraping on things too. So that's how much I lower in the front. Hang on, I'll show you the back in a second here. So here's the back. Again, I don't exactly remember what the measurements were off the top of my head. I'll double check it before when I put this up. But now it measures straight up. You're looking at about 27, I call it 27 and a half. Pretty close. I believe before it was about 28 and a quarter, in between 28 and a quarter and 28 and a half, but I'd have to double check. But yeah, so it lowered it quite a bit in the back too. And again, just enough to the point where I think it looks really good, but not so much where I'm going to, you know, be bottoming out on everything. So overall, pretty happy with how it came out, and the car does still ride exactly the same. I haven't lost any, it's not like a bumpier ride or anything like that, it's just lowered. So have all functionality still, it's just lowered, it rides exactly the same as it did before.